Welcome to the Backyard Professor podcast series, coming at you from the Rocky Mountains here in lovely Idaho. I'm Kerry Schertz, the Backyard Professor. Joseph Smith, in the Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, this is the Joseph Fielding Smith compilation, discussing the Bible. He said on page 327, I believe the Bible as it read when it first came from the pen of the original writers. Ignorant translators, careless transcribers, or designing and corrupt priests have committed many errors. I notice that Joseph Smith is not disparaging the Bible in this. He is disparaging those who were supposed to take care of the Bible. The scriptural record he had great respect for. On page 349, he's discussing the meaning of the Hebrew scriptures. He did study Hebrew, showing us one of the better ways to appreciate the meanings of the scripture. He said, I have an old edition of the New Testament in the Latin, the Hebrew, the German, and the Greek languages. I've been reading the German and find it to be the most nearly correct translation and to correspond nearest to the revelations which God has given to me for the last 14 years. Notice this, he's studying it in the Latin, the Hebrew, the German, and the Greek languages. He was a great lover of the scripture in all its languages. On page 290, he indicated something very important about the Bible. I am now going to take exceptions to the present translation of the Bible in relation to these matters. Our latitude and longitude can be determined in the original Hebrew with far greater accuracy than in the English version. You notice he's not arguing with the scriptures. He is arguing with the translation of the scriptures. This theme of the Bible being corrupted is a huge theme in the biblical scholarship and the expert analysis of what the scholars call the exegesis of the scriptures. That is, what do the scriptures mean? How can we analyze the meaning of the words, the contextual data that the words are involved in, the cultural ideas, the politics, the Systemleben, the spirit of the life of the scriptures? How do we find out what they really mean? Well, I'm always reading in the Zohar, that book of enlightenment from the medieval Jewish rabbis of the Kabbalistic traditions. Reading in the Bereshith, volume 1 of Daniel Matz Pritzker edition translation, on page 271, the rabbis are talking and they say, across the face of the expanse of heaven, Uriel, all is contained within the text. So afterward is written, God created the great sea serpents. And Rabbi Elazar said, these are Leviathan and his mate. Alternatively, these are 70 princes appointed over the 70 nations, all created to rule over earth. Matt notes in the footnote, 1129 at the bottom of the page, 70 princes, according to the rabbinic tradition, the 70 nations of the world are governed by 70 angels or heavenly princes appointed by God. And then he gives several different references. Well, this, of course, reminded me of the famous Council of the Gods and the famous 70 sons of Israel in the ancient archaeological discovered Ugaritic texts. And so I got browsing through more of the Zohar and found some other references in volume 2 of the Zohar in the Vayera. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yosef were sitting one day engaged in a verse, and as they discussed the verse, they noted that the Blessed Holy One apportioned all nations and lands among deputies and envoys, while he has inherited the land of Israel, not granting it to any other envoy or deputy, rather ruling over it himself alone. Similarly, no other angel or deputy rules over the people of Israel, rather he alone. And this is the same idea, God appointing the various rulers over the nations. Now, by medieval times in the Zohar, the Jewish rabbis, this is on page 156 in the Vayera. By the medieval times, of course, in the Zohar, the Jewish rabbis had played down the ancient Hebrew scriptures of the Council of the Gods, and especially the Deuteronomy 32, where it discusses God appointing various other gods to head the different nations. In the Ugaritic pantheon of the gods, in this Council of the Gods of El and his sons, it's the patriarch, the grand old father El, who appoints the various nations to his sons, and Yahweh was given to Israel, or rather Israel was given to Yahweh to rule. This is a very polytheistic picture, and it has disturbed Christianity and Judaism, as far as that goes, for millennia. Well, new information, new textual criticism analysis, new archaeological linguistic texts have shown that this idea of polytheism, this Council of the Gods, is extremely prominent, and also prominent in ancient Israel, mind you. They are not exempt. Well, I have a wonderful little book. Actually, it's a pretty big book. It's called The New Mormon Challenge by Beckwith, Mosser, and Owen. Zondervan published it in 2002. And this is essentially a response to recent LDS apologetics, say over the last 20 years. Of course, what they're doing is they're trying to respond to the materials of Hugh Nibley and of Farms, and to a lesser degree, Fair. And it's very nice to read for this reason. It's pretty sophisticated. I believe the critics are beginning to mature in their criticisms, with their disagreements with LDS theology and philosophy and history and culture. I think the old days of the nasty meanness and the utterly incredulous, stupid arguments, I think those days are coming to an end, and it's about time. They've lasted far, far, far too long. Now our critics are getting more and more sophisticated. They are beginning to document their sources quite a bit better. They are getting into their sources much stronger. The particular analysis that I found intriguing was Jim W. Adams. He's the assistant professor of biblical studies at Life Bible College and the adjunct professor of biblical studies at Azusa Pacific University. He is a PhD candidate in Old Testament studies at Fuller Theological Seminary. At least he was in 2002. I'm not sure if he's accomplished his PhD yet or not. If so, congratulations, Jim, and if not, good luck on keep going. Well, his chapter, The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph Smith, God, Creation, and Humanity in the Old Testament and Mormonism, is an extremely interesting read. It's quite sophisticated. He has 195 footnotes. Several of his footnotes contain many, many, many sources. It's quite intimidating to someone who is not familiar with the literature or with the discussion, and it's a well argued out contention. But I ultimately disagree with Adams. My reason is because I do have many of the sources that Adams is quoting, and I have looked carefully into these sources. This is one of my very favorite subjects. My good friend David Bakavoy, also a PhD candidate, incidentally, who hangs out on the Fair message boards with us quite a bit,